So one of the most popular game shows on TV that has been running for decades might have just made the biggest blunder that cost someone thousands of dollars and the winner's circle. Want to know what it is? Stick around to find out. Let's go. Welcome to the Puzzle Piece Exegete, your go-to place for studying the Bible in its biblical context and its original languages. My name is Stephen Rodriguez, and if you're new to the channel, make sure to click that subscribe button and that notification bell. So what did Jeopardy do that has gotten the Twitterverse, the scholarly Twitterverse, going crazy? Well, let's roll the footage and find out.
Paul's letter to them is the New Testament epistle with the most Old Testament quotations. 30 seconds. Good luck. We begin with Amy Schneider on the end. Not out of this yet, depending on how Andrew and Sam wager. What was her response? Who are the Hebrews? Yes, Jewish followers of Christianity, so of course Paul quoted the Old Testament. You will add $1,000, you have $3,400. Andrew, he narrowly in second place after a big daily double and comeback. His response, did he know it was the Hebrews? Philippians, no. So you're gonna lose just 3,201. You have 9,999. I don't know if that's leet speak or not. Sam Buttrey was in the lead with $14,800. Are we gonna see Hebrews? Oh, he wrote the Romans. Your wager was? Big, of course, 11,601. Andrew He, come from behind victory with $9,909. So Andrew He, you have just grabbed your second win of the tournament.
So the statement that was made was, Paul's letter to them is the New Testament epistle with the most Old Testament quotations. And as we saw, the answer that Jeopardy said was correct is the book of Hebrews. And now this is where we have to have a conversation. There are three things I want to address. First, Jeopardy's statement assumes that Paul wrote the book of Hebrews. Is that correct? Second, Jeopardy's statement says that this Pauline work is an epistle. Is that the case? And third, Jeopardy's statement says that the particular book in question, that's the one that they're referencing, has the most Old Testament quotations. But if the book of Hebrews is their true to north pointing compass, then the answer is no, it's not. So what is going on? Well, let's address this first point, right? If we are assuming that Hebrews is the correct answer to the statement that they're making, we have to ask, did Paul write Hebrews? Now, there are some ancient manuscript evidence that would support that some held to a Pauline authorship at an early date, right? Grouping it together with the rest of the Pauline corpus or the Pauline collection. For example, in P46 or Papyrus 46, Hebrews is placed directly after Romans, and in Codex Vaticanus, it is also included within the Pauline corpus. However, it wasn't until Jerome and Augustine that the Pauline authorship of Hebrews was truly accepted. That being said, it was in the Protestant Reformation with Luther and Calvin and people like that where Pauline authorship was called into question, and now modern scholarship for the most part has rejected Pauline authorship. But why? Well, the first thing, maybe it's the most obvious, the book of Hebrews is anonymous, right? There is no reference to a Pauline introductory formula that we commonly see in his letters, right? Paul's way of introducing himself was a common way to start a letter. We just don't see that. A second reason Pauline authorship is rejected is due to the literary style and the vocabulary used, which can be quite different than what we normally see in Paul, right? The Greek grammar and syntax is a bit different than what Paul normally uses. Now, a third reason is that the author of Hebrews seems to place themselves outside the grouping of the apostles, which is something that Paul just doesn't do. And one of the last reasons is that the theological emphasis of Hebrews and Paul can be quite different. For example, the high priesthood of Jesus, which plays such a prominent role in the book of Hebrews, we don't see that so much in Paul. So if Paul didn't write the letter, who did? Now, this is where countless commentaries and articles and dissertations have been doing battlegrounds for years, right? The authorship has been attributed to people such as Barnabas and Luke, Apollos, Priscilla and Aquila, Clement of Rome, and just the list goes on and on. The fact is, we just don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews. So in relation to the Jeopardy statement, if Hebrews is the answer that they're looking for, it is faulty to assume that Paul wrote it, especially in light of the evidence to the contrary. Now, the second point is more likely a minor miscategorization, right? Again, if Hebrews is the answer Jeopardy is looking for, it's most likely not an epistle. Though there are still scholars who would hold to this view, the fact is that it's missing many of the elements that would normally classify it as an epistle. Again, it's missing that epistolary prescript, right? That's that introductory formula that introduces the author to the recipients. Many scholars agree that Hebrews might have maybe elements, right, of an epistle or letter, but more than likely it's a sermon or a homiletical exhortation. It was written to encourage and to strengthen the Jewish Christian body to whom the author was writing, right? It was for them to remain strong and to persevere and not to go back to what they once knew. And once it was delivered, it would most likely have been read orally in the midst of the congregation, right? Which would have definitely delivered those sermon-like qualities that was intended to be heard. So while the Jeopardy statement categorizes Hebrews as an epistle, most likely it's not. Now lastly, number 3, if Hebrews is the answer that they are looking for, and if they are assuming Pauline authorship, does it indeed have the most quotations of Pauline literature? And the answer is no. The honor is bestowed to another mountain of a book called Romans. In fact, Romans has approximately 57 quotations/citations, and this includes Old Testament references that have an introductory formula such as "it is written," and those that lack the formula but are still quoting the Old Testament. Right? The book of Hebrews, don't get me wrong, it does quote the Old Testament a lot. However, it comes short when compared to Romans and has a few shy of 40 quotations/citations. So the book of Hebrews is rich in its Old Testament usage and imagery. However, in reference to this Jeopardy question, if indeed Paul did write Hebrews like they're saying, then the answer is not Hebrews, it is Romans. And to take it a step further, if Jeopardy is making a distinction between quotations, citations, we need to know this. And are there allusions and echoes being factored in? Even if allusions and echoes were added to the mix, Hebrews would still not have more quotations/citations than Romans. Now, a good book I would recommend would be The Old Made New by New Testament scholar Greg Lanier. He has done some great work on the topic, helping to draw, the distinction between the ways that the New Testament uses the Old. So someone owes an apology to Sam Buttrey, not to mention getting some money back as well as the winning night. I mean, if Jeopardy is assuming Pauline authorship, which they are, and if the basis of the question is which of the Pauline texts have the most Old Testament quotations, which it is, then the answer to the question is not the book of Hebrews, but Romans. Or should I say, what is the book of Romans? Ergo, Sam should have won. Sorry, Andrew. Anyways, that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video and hope that it sheds some light on the book of Hebrews and some Pauline authorship and the New Testament's use of the Old Testament. Please make sure to click that subscribe button and that notification bell. Till next time, keep putting those puzzle pieces together. God bless.